The Lotus and the Soldier, The Sanctuary of Silk, Hue, 1954. The air around the Perfume River in Hue, 1954 was heavy with gunpowder and the thick, sweet perfume of the lotus. For Lan, the daughter of a family who had farmed the sacred flower for generations, the lotus pond was a sanctuary. Its large, resilient leaves and perfect pink blossoms existed in sublime defiance of the war raging around them. As the French presence in Indochina crumbled, the fighting became desperate and messy. Lan's small, isolated family compound, situated near an old garrison on the river's edge, often found itself on the fringe of the conflict. When the fighting subsided, the wounded were sometimes left behind. Lan, possessing an inherited knowledge of herbal remedies and a quiet strength, tended to any soldier, regardless of the flag they wore. Among the last group of casualties brought to her care was Pierre, a young French lieutenant. He was barely 20, handsome, but with a gaze that held the profound, haunted exhaustion of a much older man. His leg was badly wounded, requiring weeks of careful attention. They communicated in fragments. Lan knew a few words of French from her grandfather. Pierre knew no Vietnamese. The language of healing, the precise temperature of a poultice, the slow drawing of breath against pain, was universal. To pass the long, silent hours of convalescence, Pierre began to teach her to write her name. He used a piece of charcoal and the clean white backs of old supply manifests. He taught her the flow of the Roman alphabet. L-A-N, he would whisper, his finger tracing the shapes on her palm. It means orchid in my language, but you are a lotus, petite fleur. She taught him the meaning of the lotus, purity, resilience, and rising untainted from the mud. Their language became an unusual hybrid. A quiet conversation written in charcoal and spoken through shared meaning, conducted in the humid silence of the retreat. The Silver Seed. Their bond was forged in the fleeting time between two wars. Lan gave him peace. Pierre gave her a world outside the pond, showing her the potential of her name written in a script that could travel. They had a single unspoken truth. Their lives lay on opposite sides of a rapidly closing door. The day came when Pierre was well enough to be evacuated. The French presence was ending, and the ships were leaving the bay for good. The farewell was abrupt, taking place before dawn when the mist still clung to the lotus pond. Pierre stood before her, his helmet under his arm, his expression a mixture of profound regret and gratitude. He could not risk a promise, he only offered a gift. From beneath his tunic, he pulled a small silver pendant. It was not a military decoration, but a jeweler's exquisite creation, a single, delicate lotus blossom, its petals unfurling in miniature. He placed it in her hand, the cool metal a sudden weight against her skin. "This is for you, Lan," he said, struggling to find the right words. "It is resilient. No matter what changes, the bloom returns, and the heart is always here." He touched her palm, where he had so often traced the letters of her name. He left quickly, joining the column of weary men retreating toward the coast. Lan stood alone as the sun rose, the golden light catching the silver lotus in her hand. It was the only tangible link to the man who had taught her to write her name in a foreign script. The Migration of the Seed, 1978. The years that followed were hard. The wars passed, leaving scars on the landscape and the soul. Lan held on to her family's land and the lotus pond, but the political and economic landscape of Vietnam eventually forced her, like so many others, to seek a different shore. She carried the silver lotus pendant every step of the way. It was her bua ho men, her charm against oblivion. By the late 1970s, Lan had settled in Marseille, France. It was a sun-drenched, bustling port city, a world away from the quiet humidity of Hue. Using the skills she had learned from her father, she opened a small, vibrant flower shop near the Vieux Port. She sold roses, lavender, and sunflowers. But her specialty, nurtured in a back greenhouse with immense care, were the Vietnamese lotus flowers. They were a reminder of where she had come from, and a tribute to the man who had taught her to write her name. She was now a woman in her late 40s, her hair streaked with silver, her face carrying the deep, wise calm of a life well lived. She spoke French fluently, but she often found herself tracing the letters L-A-N on her palm when she was alone. The bloom returns. One bright spring morning, a customer walked into her shop. He was tall, dressed in a simple, quality linen jacket. His hair was completely white, and he walked with the slightest, barely perceptible limp, a small residual mark from a decades-old wound. Lan was arranging a large bouquet of gladioli, her back to the door. The man paused near the display window. He wasn't looking at the roses or the tulips. He was looking at the small, clear vase holding a perfect pink lotus blossom. The flower, pristine and beautiful, sat on the counter, seeming to hover above the world. He pointed to it. His hand, aged but steady, lifted slightly. "I once knew a girl who grew these," he said, his voice husky, carrying a deep, familiar resonance that instantly stilled Lan's movements. Lan turned, slowly, her heart catching in her throat like a trapped butterfly. The man was older, changed by time, but the eyes, the deep, kind, haunted eyes, were the same. It was Pierre. Tears sprang to her eyes, blurring the sight of him. She lifted her hand, touching the small silver lotus pendant she always wore beneath her collar. Pierre saw the gesture. He recognized the specific silver casting, and in the next instant, he recognized the woman whose name he had carved onto his own memory. He walked to the counter, his gaze dropping to her hand. He didn't speak her name, but instead, he reached out and gently, carefully traced the letters L-A-N onto the back of her hand, just as he had done 24 years ago by the perfume river. "I never forgot how to write it," he whispered. "I never stopped growing them," she replied, her voice cracking with emotion. "I told you the lotus always returns to the light." They stood together, two travelers finally anchored, surrounded by the powerful, enduring scent of flowers, proving that some lessons, especially those of the heart, are never truly finished.